So let's walk through that first step of discovery, deploying the mid server. I have here a remote connection to a Windows environment where I'm going to set up and deploy this mid server. When you come in to search your discovery, you're going to be starting out with a Discovery Quick Start section. Now this Discovery Quick Start that we're going to be walking through is going to be very easy to follow. And what we mean by that is it's a guided process for all the steps required to define. The first step being creating the mid server user that this mid server is going to run with. So your mid server, it's going to have a profile that it uses to connect to the instance and to write the data. And this is great because it helps you when you go in and you look at the history on a calendar or list view for an asset. You can immediately understand that what update was made by a human user versus what update was made by the mid server. So we're going to just call this, our username was our discovery. Now we're also going to, of course, give that account a password. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to specify the password I want there. After I have my mid server credentials set, I'm going to go ahead and select next. Now this is going to bring me to the second step, downloading and installing the mid server. If it's our first time using the Discovery Quick Start, we'll notice that beyond these installation options, it's going to be waiting for that mid server to connect. After we install these files and we run an installer, it'll automatically set up that connection and allow us to select the verification option to make sure the proper mid server is pointed at our instance. In our case, this is our second time through, so we'll have skipped that piece. In here, I'm on a 64-bit Windows environment, so I'm simply going to press 64-bit Windows, and that's going to go ahead and it's going to install this zip file. Now once that file is installed, we're going to go ahead and open it up. And within there, you're going to find this agent folder. So all you need to go ahead and do is extract this. And then I'm simply just going to go in and extract the contents of that zip over to a local directory. Now once it's all extracted, open up that agent folder. Simply find, if you're on a Windows, that Windows batch file installer.bat. If you're on a Linux-based operating system, that sh file. And we're going to take that, right-click, and we're going to run as administrator. And what you'll see is this is going to bring up a installer window. So here, as you can see, the mid server username, password, and the URL. This is going to be your instance. B, the mid server username is going to be that same one that you created in that first step. And although this would be the mid server user, I'm just going to put my own in for now. Test your connection to validate it as a success. We can see it was successfully tested. Then we're going to go ahead and go next. So this is where I configure those mid server name parameters. Now this is important. This is the actual name of the actual mid server that you want to call it to show up in your instance. So I'm going to say here, this is going to be my Express Discovery mid server. So this is important because this service wrapper display name, this is going to be the name of the actual service. So to prevent duplicate service names, it's going to just dynamically take your mid server name, which should be unique. And that's because you're running the case where you need multiple mid servers. Maybe you're doing that subnetting or those different locations. And maybe they're running on the same, area. So we don't want those services to overlap. We're going to go ahead and make sure they have unique wrapper display names in case we're deploying multiple. So here we have my Express Discovery mid server, and it's auto appending that to the display name. I'm going to go ahead and press next. I could see configuration summary, the URL I'm going to use, my username and password. So correct, this is what I want. I'm going to press next, and now my mid server has been successfully configured. So what I'm going to do next is start that mid server, because the process, we have it configured. Now we need to actually start the physical service or process of that Java application, our mid server, to bring it to life. And we can see officially the mid server has been started. And I'm going to go ahead and exit out. And after we have all that data in, we're going to see that yes, the mid server is very well connected. The name that you supply would be displayed as well of that mid server you put in. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to go next. And the next area that we define is going to be our credentials area. So this is where you define all those different credentials that we need to use to actually run the calls on your machines to pull the required information. So I could already have defined a Windows credential set. Maybe I want to add another Windows credential set. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to say type. I would like to use a Windows credential set as my type. So you could see we do SNMP, Windows, SNMP v3, and SSH. I'm going to say it's a Windows credentials. And after my credentials are defined, my final step is to set my schedule. Since this is agentless, it runs based off a schedule you set. I recommend doing it in peak business hours so that you could capture as many devices as possible. So let's call this my peak schedule. And we're going to say this runs, let's say, an alternating, every day at precisely 1 o'clock. Or let's say, better said, 10 a.m. We think most people are in the office. So we'll put 10 a.m. in there. And you simply specify your range using CIDR notation. So there's my two range sets that I've comma separated. And after I've finally done that scheduling, I'm ready to go.